for the next 20 minutes is Ask Android form factors. So we'll be asking your questions that you submitted online through the live stream and also take some in person. So our first question that we have is from the live stream, which is, which library do we use for checking if a device is foldable, tablet, or not when using composable functions?
Sure, I can take that. First, my recommendation is to not check if the device is foldable or if the device is tablet or not. Instead, check the active runtime environment of your application. So you can use the Jetpack Window Manager library to determine active display metrics to get the size of the display in density-independent pixels. And you can also detect for the existence of any folding features like a hinge or anything else that would, who knows what's going to exist in the future. We've seen prototype devices with like rolling screens and things like that. All of that information will be available through the Jetpack Window Manager library. So just to recap, don't check if is foldable or is tablet. Instead, check how is your app running, what is relevant to your application's current display state, and use Window Manager to figure that out.
All right. Next question that we have is, can you talk a bit about Compose for Wear? What should I do if I already have a Wear OS app and it's not written in Compose?
Great question. Can you hear me okay? So Paul from the Wear Developer Relations team. So if you've got a Wear OS app already and you're interested in migrating to Compose, it's basically the same sort of strategy you would deploy for a mobile phone app. So you can start with certain activities that you can start to bring in Compose and try it out for new features is one of the best places. If your app is relatively small, you can maybe fully commit to rewriting most of it in Wear OS. There is one really important thing to say on this, which is a lot of the future UI components or the current best practice UI components and the future UI components are only in Compose. So we strongly encourage you to consider adopting it throughout your app, and your best path to that is either taking on features or trying to do the whole thing if your app is not too large. So.
And isn't it right, Paul, that you'll save both code or implementation and maintenance by switching to Compose?
Yeah.
All right, the next one, which I think kind of covers everyone we have up here representing a lot of different form factors. How can adopting new form factors and adopting Compose play together?
Interesting. I'll take the first Compose side. We've worked through, we wanted to make our Compose adoption story to be very gradual, right? And we try to make it very easy for you to take kind of little steps in adopting more of Compose. But also the timing were perfect in that we were encouraging more developers to look at large screen and kind of the different sizes of devices. I think they go super hand in hand, right? Because if you're already rethinking parts of your app, if you're thinking how to do large screen, then it's a great opportunity to merge those two together, right? Like Compose, as you saw in some of the previous talks, makes it really easy to think about adaptiveness and take decisions at runtime that are maybe harder to encode in resources. And so using these hand in hand, I feel like it's a great opportunity to, if you're looking at one, to look at the other, because the path of adopting large screen and Compose is much easier than trying to do one first and then the other.
And
Daniel?
I guess I can add a little bit to that, just to reemphasize, like, Compose as a modern UI toolkit and UI programming language and model is like really much easier to do adaptive and dynamic stuff. And similar to the statement about where, like, more of our forward-looking investments will be in Compose. So if you want the latest and greatest layout controls or things like that, Compose is the way to go. And also thinking like ahead about what Compose can enable. Like if you think about like beautiful layout state animations and transitions when going from a small screen to a large screen, you can achieve that with motion layout and views. It's a little complex. Like we're going to be making that much easier in Compose in the future. So just kind of thinking about that as you decide what to use for your next UI or your next application.
And to chime in for TV, it's also a form factor that I care very deeply about. TV Compose is in the works, right? And we're also thinking about, we've heard your feedback about how difficult it can be to use Leanback SDK and how that migration from a conventional Android mobile app to a native TV app can be very tricky. And those components that we're working on on Compose are very on the component level, right? So you think about your lazy grids and that sort of component. Migrating those over to our existing library is fairly straightforward, and there are more components that are really at that sort of that component level.
And then on Wear OS, obviously we've already explained that future investments are all going to be through Compose. But one thing we are seeing, and shout out to Todoist if you're here, I feel like they're here somewhere, is that the expertise you build in one form factor, building the UI out in that one form factor translates into gains when you adopt a new form factor. So for instance, they had built their phone app first, and then we brought them on to using Compose for Wear OS, and they did an absolutely fantastic job. And I think the quote was something like 30% engineering time saved building their UI on Wear OS. So we're seeing those gains add up, which is brilliant.
All right. Next one is going back to Wear OS. Is there some information about building Wear OS apps with sign-in the auth feature on the wrist?
Yes. No. So yes, there is. And so one of the main things we suggest to developers is to use the same package as your app on the phone, as the app on the Wear OS device. And the reason being is then it makes it really easy to send an auth token over to your phone, to your watch app, and sign in seamlessly. So the user never really has to do very much to get their authentication sorted on the phone, on the watch app. There is documentation on this on developers.android.com, and we can, if you come and find us afterwards, we can kind of talk you through it. There's certain auth flows that are supported, and if the app isn't already installed on the phone, you can use a web URL to be able to sign in through the web, and lots of great tooling there.
Awesome. I think we're staying with the Wear OS trend. Can you tell us about mobile development versus Wear OS?
Yeah. So again, yeah, Wear OS is based on Android. So as we mentioned before, there's a lot of similarities if you're used to developing mobile apps. But Wear OS is optimized for the wrist, and so you should really think about what's the use cases you want to enable on the wrist. So it's like glanceable use cases that takes just a few seconds. And yeah, also think about power consumption. You know, how many pixels do you lit versus not? I believe everything is dark mode on Wear, right? So like we're really trying to save, you know, battery where we can. So that's a few things you should think about when you're developing for Wear OS versus mobile.
Next one, we have which Material 3 component in Wear OS can I use for developing an onboarding screen?
Good question. We can, well, it depends on what, so specifically for the onboarding screens, come and find me later and we will give you, unless Yuri, do you want to take a stab at this one? Shout out the answer, I'll repeat it. I'm not sure. We need more information. Come and see us in the Office Sandbox afterwards. It runs immediately after this. So.
For live audience here too, we'd love to take some questions if there's any that you're dying to ask us all.
They don't have to all be about where.
Yes. While you're thinking of one, I think we'll move on to the next one here. What are some of the biggest challenges you've seen with apps when building for large screens?
It's a great question. There's a variety of things. I think one of the biggest things is, I guess there's two categories that I would say. One is like adopting a large screen mindset and thinking about your app isn't going to be running in isolation. It's going to be used in a multitasking, multi-window environment. The display size is dynamic, not static at runtime. And a lot of the issues that developers experience can be classified almost as bugs. And this is like the large screen restricted state that we talked about in quality guidelines, where you have continuity issues or your app doesn't resize appropriately. So we have to put it in like a letterboxing mode or a pillar boxing mode, or those things is one. And then the other category is we've heard so much from developers that they want us to be more opinionated about what to do on large screens. They don't know where to start. They don't know what to do, and they don't want to go out of their way to do a whole bunch of independent evaluation and research on how to make their app better. And so we've been working really hard to provide more opinionated guidance end to end. And so if you look at our large screen app quality guidelines, like that's a tiered approach to do this first, do this next, do this last if you have the time, so that you can kind of take it bit by bit rather than having to do everything at once. Or similarly, like our canonical layouts guidance, it's, hey, like if you have this type of content relationship in your application, use this layout pattern, and more specifically, here's how it should work, and here's how it should look, and here's how to build it. So those are kind of the two tiers. One is think about your app running on large screens and how it runs on large screens, and two is like, we're gonna try to be more specific about what makes a good large screen experience so you don't have to go do all that work yourself. We'll centralize it, basically.
I think one thing for me is just as a user using an app, like I can, like working on large screens, I kind of know what apps are doing and like generally can think about that. But it's just a really frustrating experience when you're using an app and then a feature is not available. So I have to know to like go back to the front screen of a foldables to find the feature. Like those are the sort of things where like just if that's not available, it's a very confusing user experience to have.
Yep, that's why I don't like Is Tablet.
Going the other way now, what are some of the best large screen experiences you've seen?
That's a good question. One that I use a lot personally is YouTube tabletop mode. Like when I'm sitting at home eating lunch, because I mostly work from home, but I go in sometimes, I'll just have my little device on the table. Or if I have a really busy meeting schedule, Google Meet also works in tabletop mode, which is awesome from a foldables perspective. Anyone have others?
I know there are some folks from Meta here today, and they've done a terrific job on WhatsApp on tabletop mode as well. And also drag and drop. Some really differentiated experience with drag and drop.
Yes. I guess another example, as I was traveling here, I was using like a tablet and a foldable to practice these presentations. So like using Google Workspace apps and Google Slides and things like that has been really useful on the larger screen device because I can like see the slides, see the notes really easily, stuff like that.
All right. Moving on to the next one, can you also make this, this is talking about visual linting. Can you also make this feature available for XML? Although I think that is, it is for XML. Is maybe the question's for Compose?
Okay, yeah, I can take this one. So for those of you who don't know, visual linting is a feature that is XML based. So automatically run your layouts across different reference devices to check for actually tier 2 large string issues. So things like if you're using a bottom navigation bar on a larger screen, or if your button is really stretched on a larger screen. And so we are, given that last question also talked about investment in Compose. So we're actively working on investing how we can do this feature for Compose, because you can think about like Compose looks at UI kind of differently. It's more modular. Like you can have a button, you can have a full screen. And so that's something that we want to work on. So if you have more feedback, let us know.
Especially if you have suggestions for visual lint rules, like we're constantly trying to add new rules too. Definitely file feedback in Android Studio.
Yes.
We have another question now. We talked a lot about canonical layouts today. So the question is, it was interesting to hear about canonical layouts and how to implement them. So many options, which might be a bit confusing. How can we know which one to use for our app?
I can take that one as well. So one app could use N or multiple different canonical layouts in the same app, but it's primarily driven by the content your application displays and the relationship between content. So when I was first learning about them, I was working with design folks. And for me, the biggest difficulty was list detail versus supporting panel. But what really helped kind of clarify for me was list detail, the content will have a direct dependency relationship. You cannot have a detail pane without the list item first. Like the list navigates to the detail always. Supporting panel is different in that the secondary content doesn't have a direct, tightly coupled dependency relationship. An example could be I have a primary content that is my main focus and supplementary content that if it didn't even exist on the screen, it wouldn't break the experience, where you need to have the detail pane for a list of items. You don't need to have the supporting panel content for the primary content to still be useful. And then feed to me was, I guess, the most obvious. It's like, okay, I have a bunch of things that are all equal in weight, equal in merit. But it's totally possible to navigate from like a feed into a list detail layout. You could have like a feed of items that are all lists, and then you navigate into one and it's a list detail. Like these more complex interactions are possible. And there might be more. Like these were the patterns that we discovered that were by far the most common. There might be edge cases or niche things that don't fit into this model, and we'd love to hear from you. If you have a use case you think that doesn't fit into these large screen optimized layouts, definitely let us know.
All right, Ben, I think this next one's for you. What is the difference between Android Auto and Android Automotive?
Yeah, so Auto is the projected phone experience that can be done either over USB or Wi-Fi. So basically your phone is powering the experience on cars that support it, which is pretty much every new car nowadays. And then Android Automotive is where the car itself is an Android device. So it's running a special version of Android called Android Automotive OS. For you as a developer, a lot of the work that you do on Auto can also carry over to Automotive. So it's not a one-off investment. And then if you're modularizing well, that you can easily share that code across all the different form factors, including both Auto and Automotive as well.
Next one, but switching gears again over to TV. What is in Compose for TV?
So the release notes are public on the Jetpack release notes for TV. So I think currently we're on Alpha 1. Like I mentioned during my session, Alpha 2 is coming, I think, later today. So I'll just refresh that page. But what's currently in it, to answer the question, is there's a lazy grid, there's a lazy row and a lazy column, and we have dedicated components. So why do we have those? I think I should touch on that a little bit. Is that the scrolling and focus behavior on TV is a little bit different than on phones and tablets and foldables and watches, I suppose. So the behavior that we have there exhibits something more expected for focusability using D-pad on a remote control. And then we also have a featured carousel and an immersive list. So these are components that you typically see in a TV app where featured content scrolls past, it's kind of like fake crossfades, and it has these indicators at the bottom showing which page you're looking at. And the immersive list has basically a grid, horizontally scrolling list, and you can, as you scroll through it, it shows some featured content with some areas to interact with, like to engage and watch that piece of content. As for the future, I can't really say. Just stay tuned. We're still in early alpha. And again, feel free to hit me up in office hours, and maybe we can understand like what your requirements are so I can sort of pass that along to the engineering team.
Switching gears again, we have, why is now a good time to invest in building an app for Wear OS?
So now is a really great time to start investing in Wear OS app because, I mean, for one thing, there was this announcement a couple of months ago, last month, there was big manufacturer started producing a watch. Google, that's it. So the Google Watch launched recently. But not just that, that's just the tip of the iceberg. What we're seeing is a fantastic portfolio of devices that have started shipping and getting really out there into users' hands. So now is a really fantastic time to start kind of thinking about, is there some use cases in your app that would be best served through a watch, through a wearable device? And if the answer is yes, then that's really the time to start looking at the platform and what it can do. There's some really great sensors on watches these days, and the battery life is really getting there. So it's now is a really good time to start reviewing your CUJs and thinking about, is there some kind of really useful thing that the user needs to do maybe multiple times a day that's small enough that can be fulfilled through a watch screen? And obviously, also there's tooling. So if AK wants to talk about tooling.
Yeah, we've been working really hard to ensure that the experience in, for example, Android Studio or the whole distribution experience is good. So please have a try, and please give me feedback if there's something you're missing or something you want.
All right. Next one up is now an Android equipped with large screen APIs? And I can take this one. So now an Android, if you don't know, is a sample that we have published that's pretty, our probably most complex sample that we have right now. You've seen it showcased in a few of our talks. The answer is yes. It has some large screen APIs, definitely like the nav rail versus nav bar and that handling. I think it should definitely have some more. I think there's an open GitHub issue I have assigned to myself right now to do some more of that. So yeah, I should probably do that once we're all done here.
And it also has the window size classes APIs.
Yes. Yep. Window size class APIs, navigation bars, navigation rail. I think it should have a list detail too.
Yeah,
It is a good example of the feed layout as well. It uses a great adaptive feed grid-based layout. So.
Yeah, just want to plug too. We did release the design file on Figma. You can find their designs for large screen, and so if you're interested in contributing to build a large screen for Android, please look at the design files and you can make it yourself too.
Awesome. I think we have time for about one more question here. How is user behavior changing with large screens?
So a lot of the things that we've seen from app developers when they actually do the work to better support these form factors is increased active user count, increased user engagement, more user time spent in the application, which is really awesome to see, and generally trying to do things that the form factor enables. So I think one of the quotes we have is like Gmail launched some UI, sorry, not Gmail, Chrome announced some UI affordance to launch a new window in the app itself, and they saw like an 18x increase in multitasking within Chrome. And so like really like people want this, people who are using these devices kind of crave these better experiences. And it's a huge opportunity for app developers to differentiate by actually doing the work. So I would say those are the big things. Personal usage pattern. My primary phone now is a Fold 4 device, and I mostly use the inner display for multitasking purposes. Like, it's awesome. Or similarly, like, I love a good list detail layout. It's so much better than using the outer display and having to like navigate back and forth and all those things. So just like, it's a much more productive device in form factor.
All right. Well, that is all we have for right now. Thank you all to the panel, and thank you to all the live speakers today. For all of you joining for the live stream, be sure to keep watching. We're going to have more content pre-recorded playing for you there. And be sure to tune in next week as well for the third day of ADS for the platform track. So thank you very much.